Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, December 19th, 2024 Watertown Planning Commission meeting. Can I get a roll call?
Yes, Brink.
Here.
Culhane.
Here.
Dolly.
Here.
Oletsky.
Present.
Spire.
Here.
And Kays, Douglas Johnson, and Ford are absent. We do have a quorum. And for the Planning Commission, that is with 4, so it is a simple majority. So it will be 3 out of 5 to pass any of the actionable items.
All right, thank you, Brandy. For item 3 on the agenda, we have the invitation for public comment participants submittal. If you'd like to speak on an item that's not on the agenda today, you can sign up there next to Brandy, and we'll have a time at the very end of the meeting. Item 4 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I'll need a motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the agenda?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Item 5 on the agenda is 5A is the approval of the minutes from the December 5th, 2024 meeting. I need a motion for that.
So moved.
I have a motion for approval
I'll second that.
and a second. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those are approved. We'll move on to item 6A on the regular agenda, which is the 2025 Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission meeting schedule.
Yes, I would pull that up, but it was also included in the agenda packet. We're just getting some things logged in. We had an update to our Microsoft Office, and I think in the internet. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know. Obviously, we follow the city council meetings. There's only one meeting, and I can't remember what month that falls in, that we will not have our meeting that Thursday following the council meeting. We'll have it the following week because there's a larger break. I think it's August, in weeks there. So it follows the same system that we have in the past. And then what staff would ask is that if you know ahead of time that there are dates that do not work for you, to please let us know as soon as possible, just because obviously there's time and preparation and public notice that has to go into preparing for these meetings for staff. So letting us know ahead of time is great, and as far in advance as you can, the more it'd be much appreciated.
Make a motion to approve the 2025 meeting schedule.
I have a motion by Culhane,
I'll second that motion.
second by Oletsky. Any additional discussion on those? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote.
All right, Spire,
Yes.
Oletsky,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes,
Culhane,
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
that motion carries. So that agenda item is approved, and we'll move on to item 6B, which is consideration of ordinance number 24-24. Brandy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Blake. I'm gonna have Nick look at one more thing here with the update. No, I've got it. I just didn't know what that was doing up there. All right. So as we discussed last meeting, and we had the presentation over the compilation of ordinance amendments to Title 21 for the zoning ordinance, all of these ordinances on today's agenda I've just broken them down, so there's 5 actions that will take place, but they include multiple chapters within the ordinances that we are amending. So with ordinance number 2424, this is the largest one. It includes, and the reason why these are all grouped together is because it includes the summary of the district regulations, all of the zoning districts, definitions, and then it talks about manufactured homes, modular homes, and then daycare homes. And then the definitions are also included because we, as discussed, have come up with different dwelling uses or dwelling types that are also reflected in the individual zoning districts. Overall, so with the zoning districts themselves, the only thing that's changing there are the uses and how they were defined differently. And then, let's see here where I wanted to go with that. Oh, there is a new proposed zoning district for the residential storage district, as we discussed, that would allow that type of use to not have to utilize the R3 multifamily residential district to provide assurance when somebody is wanting to implement storage adjacent to residential districts. The whole summary of the district chart regulations, that is allowing for the dwelling unit or the dwelling types to be in the R2 single-family attached residential districts to allow duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, along with single-family homes, in the R2 and R2A district to allow for higher densities and more housing options, because those are truly still single-family attached in nature. And then also encouraging the more multifamily dense developments to utilize the R3 multifamily residential districts. Obviously, a lot of this, we went into depth as far as with the presentation. With R2A, it was one of the feedback from the board, or one of the feedback items from the board was to look at that R2A district and allow it to be more dense than what I had proposed it at. So I did tweak that slightly, but it is still within reason to what we allow in the R2 and the R3. The R2 is more protected. The R2A is more of a redevelopment of the missing middle component that we're looking for in our housing portfolio for as a community. Other things that I'll point out, and I know there are quite a few people here, and I had been contacted quite frequently in the past 2 weeks about the daycare homes regulations that are being proposed. So I'll touch on that. We did speak to KXLG if people were able to gain any insight from that. But what is being proposed for the ordinance amendment changes nothing to the regulations that are in place today for in-home daycare facilities. And what we have them listed as in ordinance are daycare homes. So previously, daycare homes were a use in certain zoning districts. To make it more consistent with how other uses are regulated, we took it out of the use and made it its own chapter. So all of the requirements that we have listed for an administrative approval, and I'll get into that, have already existed in ordinance today. And let me get down to that portion so I can walk you through this. Okay, what do we got going on here?
Can you make it print any smaller?
All right.
And Brandy, I'll probably have you try to zoom in there on the screen too.
Yep, I will do that. We just gotta get to it first. All right. So, and then I'm gonna pull up the existing ordinance today. And so for daycares to receive approval from the city with today's process and what is in ordinance today, what's required, is that you apply for a conditional use. That is a $200 application. And then you come to the Board of Adjustment to have the conditional use granted, where you look at the A through H items that are in ordinance and make sure that a property is appropriate for that type of use. The other thing that happens with the conditional use application is the neighbors or the adjacent property owners within 250 feet are notified of your application. So that if they have input, because it is a residential district that somebody is utilizing as a business, as with any other home occupation, they come to the board for a conditional use. The idea of what is being proposed for the ordinance amendments is that you could have, if you meet the 3 requirements, that you can be approved administratively by staff, no fee, no going to the board, no letters being sent out. So all that this ordinance amendment was supposed to do was create a streamlined process, but other than the streamlined process as a benefit, nothing changes with what has existed in ordinance for daycare, in-home daycares. And if daycares do not have the proper permitting, they are considered non-conforming. And the only way that we address those is if there's a complaint. We look at your address, we see if you have received approval, and if you have not, we contact you because you are actually out of conformance with ordinance of what's required when you own a business or what's required of certain properties in certain locations per the zoning ordinance. So we are not, with this ordinance amendment, we're not going to be hunting down daycares that have not received a conditional use. It is on your honor. And anybody that has received the conditional use and followed the proper procedures, you are grandfathered. You are considered conforming. This is just for new daycares. If you come in and you are able to meet the 3 requirements, which is 35 square feet of interior space, 50 square feet of exterior outdoor recreational space. Those have already existed in ordinance. They've already been required. A fence, a 6-foot privacy fence, and I've also added in there or a vegetative buffer in case somebody has a hedge, an established hedge or whatnot, that still does provide screening. And that is just for the required outdoor space. So you can only have 12 children in an in-home daycare. So in total, that is 600 square feet. I believe I did this math here.
And Brandy, that 12-child limit, that state statute?
Yes. And you also have, so that's 100 linear feet of fence. So that is 8 panels or 13 panels if they're 8 feet in width. And if a panel is $100, it is $1,300. Yes, that is a financial constraint for some, but it is also, if you cannot meet that requirement, you can still come to the board. And if your neighbors do not have any opposition or there's nothing brought up that is unique to your property, then you might not have to have that requirement. But this is just because your neighbors would not be notified. It would not go to the Board of Adjustment, and it would be approved by staff. So that is a protection for the neighborhood so there's no unperceived intrusions to a residential neighborhood, because that is something that the city has to look at too. We value every component, like the childcare is a noble cause and is very needed. So we're not trying to impact that negatively at all. This was just trying to create a route for a streamlined process. And it's something that, I'm directly involved with the Child Care Action Team, and we just met yesterday, which involves a large group of people that are involved with the industry, from all different aspects. So definitely something that we want to continue to build on, and I think that there's opportunity for some constructive input of ways to improve or ways to make things easier. This was just supposed to be a product of that, because hearing these things of the process is confusing to providers. It's really just a simple inclusion into this overall zoning ordinance amendment that is not supposed to cause any disrupt in how things are today. So
Yeah, I believe, some of the feedback from the board over the years has been to try to streamline that process as well, because we want to make it easier for the providers to start their business, right? We don't typically fail to approve any daycare. I think over my 11 years here, I can only think of 2 where we even had any question. It really came down to some safety concerns that required a couple of additional conditional aspects to them. But for the vast majority of the daycares, there's no concern from the board, and we wanted to build a process that allows those providers to not have the burden of having to come to one of these meetings, to have a public hearing and go through this whole process, but be able to just apply for it at City Hall. If you meet the requirements, you're good to go. Through that time, these requirements regarding the fencing and the number of children and the square footage space, about 80% of the applications that come to us meet those requirements. And so if you could prevent 80% of the applicants from having to go through this burdensome process, that was the goal that we're trying to achieve here.
So I went in depth there with the daycare discussion. Let me just look here to see. Oh, actually, I just wanted to show how that is in ordinance today about what is required for the daycare facilities. So what is being proposed in the ordinance amendment then does include those 2, these 2 are the same requirements. The fence is the only thing that's different, and that is just if the administrative approval is desired. Otherwise, I just want to make sure that there's nothing else here that I should go into depth. Obviously, we went into greater depth with all of these ordinance amendments, but at the presentation at the previous meeting. But I will, all of that, I will stand by for any specific questions that the board may have.
As you just hit on it, and I just want to hit on it again, Brandy, but on the daycare, the only thing that was new to the requirements is the fencing. And if they don't have a fence, they can still come before the board exactly as they would be required to do today and ask for an exception.
Yep. And so that vegetative buffer also, I'll note that I've added that in this meantime because I don't want, if somebody has like a hedge already established and that is providing the screening, I don't want to get into a situation like where you have to be, obviously it has to be 6 feet. So you can't just plant some shrubs and call that a screen. But if somebody has that established, then great. So that was not included in your board packets. So, but that would be something that I would like to add and have added that we could have go on to city council if this is approved.
Chair?
Yes.
Brandy, where does the 6 foot come from?
Well, a fence is in a residential district is a standard 6 feet.
So that is defined otherwise in ordinance?
Even chain link fences are 6 feet?
It has to be a privacy fence with 10% transparency. So, I guess, is there another suggestion that you have?
No, I'm just curious where that came from.
Yeah, so that is an ordinance for the fences, walls, and hedges that you can have, well, you can go up to 7 feet in a residential district. But 6 feet is like the standard panel you would purchase.
Yeah, you can purchase 4-foot fences.
We don't have the public hearing open quite yet here. Was there any?
6 feet also provides the privacy component.
Yeah. Questions? Okay. I will open the public hearing at this time, so hopefully that has provided a little bit more insight. I know there was some misinformation on Facebook, but if anybody's like to speak in the public here, we do have the public hearing open, so we can go ahead and have you come up to the microphone. I will ask that if you do, please state your name for the record, and we do have this televised.
My name is Ashlyn Hartman. First, I want to say thanks for giving us the opportunity to come up and speak about our questions and concerns. I'm an in-home daycare provider in Watertown. I've been doing this for 6 years. I've been watching kids for about 17, and there's many other providers in town that have been doing this much longer than I have. The point being, we love what we do and we are passionate about it. I can't speak for all, but I can say for myself and many others that we're not against the licensing. It's not that we're opposed to it. Although many people weren't aware that it was a thing that they needed. And I think with that being just that in itself, they felt a little ambushed by it when we read this. We're compliant with it and we'll do it but with feasible and realistic measures, because as they're stated right now, especially if we were not aware about it to begin with, they're really not. When this came to light like 2 weeks ago, it was very concerning to myself as well as many other providers that we were possibly going to be out of a job, and our parents were going to be out of or have to get rid of or quit their jobs too, because there would be nowhere for them to go for daycare. It's the reality if these licensing requirements are set like they're stated. I know that there's been a conversation on like KXLG stating that we would be grandfathered in and it would only affect new providers. It's great for us, but it doesn't help the solution. I say that because I know like when I started, it's a very big investment to start a daycare. It's a big thing to do it mentally, physically, financially, everything. It's hard. And if anything, if you want to entice people to start, this isn't going to do it. The housing market right now is crazy. If we can't meet the square footage, so then, you want them to start a daycare, they got to buy a new house. That house doesn't come with a fence, then that's an additional expense. Or it does come with a fence, but it's only 4 feet and a chain link fence, so it's still not sufficient. There's centers in town that have classrooms with 15 to 25 kids per classroom. So you take that times 35 square feet, those classrooms, I can say, are not big enough for the kids that they are. And so if they're expected to do, or they're not expected to do that, how are we expected to do that in our own home? A lot of us have only one level of our home that we can use. Some of us don't have the option to have a split level home where we can separate things. And, you put in, our houses are all laid out differently. They also have a chain link fence at some of these centers. They're not privacy. So, I understand, they have different guidelines than we do, but I don't know if you know either that these requirements aren't even required by the state if you want to be state registered when they come into your home to see these. These are not required by them. So that is also was kind of a big blow to a lot of people, and I say that because that's how it felt to a lot of us. I don't know, I just think if you're then gonna penalize them per day, you don't get a 30-day or 60-day grace period to get things in order. I don't know, it doesn't sound like a great way to start a business. It doesn't sound very enticing. I don't know if you have kids in daycare or if you have in the past, but quality and the safety of our children is the most important. We understand that, that's what we want. But when we enroll our children, 99% of the time, our families come into our home beforehand. They look at our home, they look at our contract, they look at our insurance, they see the layout. If they don't like the way that it appears or if they don't think it's a good fit, they will choose to go somewhere else. So I think instead of worrying about how big of a home we have or how tall of a fence we have, if we have one, I know for me, I have a 5.5-foot privacy fence. So, it provides what we needed. It's gated, it's locked. I have cameras, I have great neighbors. To me and my families, it's more than sufficient, and that is not what they worry about when their kids are in my care and we're outside playing. I think maybe worry about if they have an insurance policy or adequate fire exits, or are they CPR and first aid training? Are they mandatory reporters? Are they trained in that? Or just any training you choose, and then follow up on that. I think for me that is way more of a important thing to look at than the size of my living room and my toy room and whether they're big enough or not or whatever. We live in a world of incentivizing in order to accomplish something. I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's just the way that it is. If there's nothing in it for them, or if it's going to be difficult to do it before they even start, they're not going to do it. I guess with the principle being that grandfathered in or not, I guarantee you still may lose some providers with these, because the height of a fence or the size of our home, it doesn't define or determine the care and love that we give these kids 10+ hours a day, every day of the week. It's not why we do what we do. So I guess I just encourage you to educate yourself on all of the aspects of it, you know, and reconsider. Also, I just want to note from many of us that I know this isn't probably a common thing, but if you have a public meeting for daycare, can we maybe reconsider the time of it so that, you know, we all don't have to close or make different arrangements? Because now we have, I don't know how many of us that have 12 families that are out of care right now, so we can be here. I understand that's just a little thing to some people, but it's a pretty big thing, and we would appreciate it. So I guess that's all I have, and I thank you for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you.
Like, if I could make a comment before, like, as far as what our purpose is looking out for zoning districts. As far as the education component is where all of these ordinances have, if we don't add the streamlining process, nothing changes. Like, everything that most of these things that we're talking about have existed in ordinance. And that is on a specific business owner you can't claim ignorance about that you didn't know that the speed limit was this. These things have existed. So there is that component too of when you are starting a business of looking into all avenues, because these requirements have existed. We're not adding them. That is what I want to make clear, and to keep it a separate, the separate discussion. So the only thing that we're contemplating today with the other 43 ordinances that we are reviewing is that we are creating a streamlined process. So otherwise, that's where, if that's not added, nothing changes. There is still a conditional use requirement for daycares in home, because and the only reason the fence is included, it's because it's a residential neighborhood where your neighbors aren't getting notifications. So what we're really looking at it from a zoning component is the protection of a neighborhood. That is what zoning is about. It's not about the fact that it is a struggle of being a daycare provider, or that component. That's not really this doesn't change any of that. It is actually just trying to be a benefit. So if it's something that we don't want to add, that's fine.
We definitely want to provide a faster path to go through this, because as she just mentioned, it can be a burden to even come to these meetings. And that was the whole point of trying to come up with what are the conditions that we would say, if they meet these conditions, it's an automatic approval. We don't have to put it in a public hearing. We don't have to come before a board and ask for special permission. If you meet all these boxes, automatically approved. If you don't, you can still come in front of the board. Same exact process that exists today, and that every legally authorized daycare center in the town has gone through, and they've requested a conditional use. We typically do not deny these things either. So if you don't have a fence, that doesn't mean you're not getting approved. We've approved dozens of facilities that don't have a fence.
Hi, Abby Jordan here, local daycare provider, almost 10 years. So I have a question. If I go to each of my neighbors and do this, then I don't have to have a privacy fence? If they all agree that I can do my daycare, then I don't have to have a privacy fence?
No, so you would still come to the Board of Adjustment and get your conditional use, and then your neighbors would be notified. And then if they did not have a problem, then they maybe wouldn't show up to it and voice that concern. And then the Board of Adjustment would approve your daycare.
Okay.
And just because your neighbors don't agree with you having a neighborhood daycare doesn't mean that we're going to turn it down either. There's been a lot of times where a neighbor was frustrated, didn't want a daycare next to him, and we approved it.
Okay.
Because we support home daycares.
Okay. 6, 7 years ago, I came in to get a building permit And when I was getting my building permit to do my actual 6-foot privacy fence, before I even knew that this was a thing, actually, the lady I talked to said, we're actually making some changes, so can I get your name and number, and I will call you when we make the changes to the daycare stuff, and then we'll get a hold of you. So I called her back about a month and a half later, after our fence was done, and she's like, oh, no, we don't have it done yet, I'll give you a call. I reached out to her 2 more times, and I never heard back. So I tried to get my daycare stuff done, I tried to get myself licensed, and I never heard back. So how does that work for me? I've been doing daycare almost 10 years, and I tried to get myself licensed twice. So now what? Now I have to hurry up and wait to get myself licensed?
I think from a standpoint of, where that falls within code, it's just legally non-compliant, or?
Yeah, because technically, like, it should have been, I don't know how many years ago that was, but if the daycare's been in existence for 10 years, I mean, it's been existing. So it's not really a matter of, it's just really because if you end up not receiving, and like Chair Dolly said, we don't run into not approving these very often, or ever maybe, but you, well, I guess with location, that can be concerning sometimes, but it's just really more so like you're putting in the investment of doing this business that you don't have all of the approvals for. So that's kind of the only downfall with it. All of our, and this is something that I'll just state publicly too, because there's been a lot of questions that I've answered throughout the last couple weeks here. Any building permit that you receive or conditional use that you apply for is all done online through our website or on watertownpermits.com. And so you can also just apply for your conditional use. You apply online, and then when we receive that, we process it, we get it to the board, and that process would still be the same if you don't meet all 3 of the requirements that we're trying to add as a streamlined process. Now, what would happen is that you would apply, if you're going to use a streamlined process and you meet the 3 requirements, you would apply. You'd check the 3 boxes, staff would verify, you'd be good. You'd be approved. So the good thing is that if you do have a fence installed, then you wouldn't have to come to the Board of Adjustment.
So does somebody go through and like check to make sure that I have all this stuff, or you just take my word?
We would just, so the only thing that we are looking at is the interior and exterior space per child. And that's 35 and 50, and that has existed in ordinance too already. We would just have you give us if you have a layout, blueprint, floor plan, whatever, that you're gonna show. We could even take a square footage from GIS of how much square footage, because overall, if you have 12 kids,
Satellite picture.
yeah, honestly. And it's existed in ordinance, and I can honestly say that's never been a factor of, I just kept things consistent because this was not supposed to be a large change. Like this is what
And you don't-
ordinances had.
You don't require like a, professional survey. I mean,
No.
people have come in requesting these, home daycares with just a napkin drawing essentially showing, where in the home that they're going to have the daycare space. It's not that formal where you need to have engineering drawings and you need to invest money in that aspect of it.
Right.
Si-
And then parking. Parking's the other thing that we look at, which,
You can get your outside measurements of your home from the county director of equalization online, and then just fill in where the rooms are.
Okay, and then what about the people who don't have the adequate parking? What happens with them? Who, if they don't have like a driveway, or they only have like a one-way that they can park on, or they only have an alley? Like, then what?
those would be it's hard to say what the situation would be, but those would just be reviewed. So what the ordinance says is provide adequate off-street parking or other suitable plan for the loading and unloading of children so as to not obstruct public streets or create other traffic or safety concerns. Employees, and this is another thing actually, this has always existed in ordinance. So it's employees shall be provided with an off-street parking location. So if there's question as far as what staff's review, because these 3 the special use provisions. If there's question with something that the staff feels like it cannot be an administrative approval, we'd bring it to the board. Which would be the
same-
only,
same
yeah,
process that
which
exists
is the
today.
only option today.
Yep.
And then, gosh, okay, with the employee, you can have an employee at your daycare. Employees were not allowed at home occupations. So that was a difference of that there were separate provisions for daycare. It's its own use. So I've learned that in the last 2 weeks that has been something of confusion.
Chair,
Yes, sir.
follow up, Ms. Jordan, if you don't mind. Full disclosure, my neighbor.
Yeah.
Welcome. So when we're talking, throwing a couple terms here, I just want to make sure, clarity-wise, are we talking licensing or permitting?
Permitting.
Permitting. And permitting fees in general for the city for different various uses. You said this is currently a $200 permitting fee for an in-home daycare?
It is actually just a conditional use application, and it is $200.
And that's standard fee for conditional use application?
Yep.
So, as I understand right now, the streamlined process would waive that fee so long as there was no need to go before the board for conditional use.
Correct.
So anyone that currently was not compliant with a permit could just come to City Hall and then get right with the permit and get that satisfied
Yep.
with no fee.
Correct.
Okay.
Which if you don't, it was stated in the crowd of assuming you meet those requirements. Where, yes, if you do not, then you come to the Board of Adjustment, which is the only process today.
Yep.
I understand, and that's like any other venture. You got to be aware of when you purchase a property, you have an interest in doing a business, what the constraints and limitations or what the impacts may be. So it'd be the same for any other business consideration, in my opinion. I understand the homes have, maybe it's something that was developed, it wasn't initially thought of, but that's just, you got to be recognizing that this applies across the board for any business that may come, before the city and requesting permission.
Chair,
Go ahead.
Chair, Brandy, how is the square footage, particularly interior square footage, calculated? I mean, are we talking bathrooms? Are we talking,
Interior floor area. Like, I
Gross
don't care
interior
whatever your floor area is inside. We'll take a measurement of the exterior, so altogether,
are we sectioning off parts of the houses, even if they're not in use for the daycare?
420 square feet. No.
I understand that. So as long as you
Because-
have a house that's bigger than 420 square feet interior?
Yes.
It doesn't need to be exclusively reserved for,
Okay.
What?
it doesn't need to be exclusively reserved for daycare.
Correct. Because we're not coming to your house and inspecting.
But I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought, on previous ones we've done, they've showed a plan of where the kids will be. If it's a split level and they say that's only the downstairs, we've only looked at downstairs square footage. I mean, and when, in our calculations in the past, I believe that's how we've utilized it.
I don't recall that.
I
I know that, like, in my review of these applications, I have not gotten into the detail of that.
So assuming that the house, not the garage, but the house itself has 420 square feet, it gets approved.
Yeah, that's a non-factor.
Chair?
Yep.
Abby, or Ms. Jordan, sorry. To answer one of your other questions, how does this get enforced? Traditionally, code enforcement is enforced through the code officer. So city ordinance, there's a guy that drives around and checks to make sure you pull your trash can in, right? I always get those tickets. Make sure you mow your lawn, right? Like, I've gotten that letter a couple of times. As a practical matter, if you're not licensed today not licensed, permitted, this is not licensure, it's just permitted through the city. If you walk out of here, no one's gonna come and find you. No one's gonna knock on your door. I don't think so. We'll have to make sure.
No.
Terry's got other stuff he can do. Nobody's gonna be knocking on your door. From the board's perspective, I think, I was just trying to figure out how long I've been on here. I think 7 years, and I've probably seen about that many come before the board in that time. it's almost always a relatively instantaneous approval. And so what we wanted to do, both for our sake and time, but also for your guys' sake and time, is to say, hey, we don't need to oversee you guys. Go to the city hall, get the permit. You don't need to come before us. You don't need to show up at 4:15. You don't need to go through these very fun hearings. And I know some of you, I think, I recognize a few of you from years past. We don't need to do the oversight. That's the whole idea, is to make it automatic, make it easier for everybody involved, and I guess a little bit cheaper. If there are particular issues with fencing and that kind of stuff, this is a good time to engage with that. And I know you said when you said that, I was like, yeah, we've probably been talking about this for 5 or 6 years. Welcome to the speed of government, unfortunately. Planning and zoning, and Brandy's done a really good job, but we're doing a massive 200-page overhaul of the entire zoning, that everything from how far your house can be next to the other person to parking and all sorts of stuff all throughout the city. So it's a good time to engage. So if you've got suggestions specifically for fencing height, that kind of stuff, I mean, I think we're willing to entertain it, either now or soon in the future, in terms of suggestions, because nothing is set in stone other than what currently exists,
Okay.
which is what Brandy's been talking about. The idea, and as a greater conversation, Brandy and I have been involved in it, and I would encourage all of you folks to be engaged with it. I know it's hard because you have a job and a really tough job, but we're having a big conversation, nonprofits, city staff, concerned citizens, providers, businesses, trying to figure out what are we gonna do about childcare, because it's a major issue. You guys are like the most important people in Watertown. Personally, I've got 2 kids in home daycare, and if that went away, you're right, we're in deep trouble. We're trying to make it easier, more efficient, more effective, cheaper. That's the goal. Generally, what we talk about on the zoning side is very specific to how high is your fence, right? But I think there's some other conversations gonna be like, how do we, like, if there is a fence requirement, how do we make sure that it isn't hard for you guys to meet that? And hopefully there's gonna be some other involvement there. So those conversations are going on, and I would really, really encourage you to be involved, to the extent you can. I know it's tough, because childcare is a very hard job. There's a reason why I don't do it. I'm not capable of doing it even for my 2, let alone 12. So I respect that. But those conversations are going on, and would invite you to participate. There's a meeting that happens once a month at 1:30.
And let's have them, I can pass this around. They
Please.
can give their contact information and
Please.
we can get that to Sarah Faust is the kind of spearheading it.
There's a lot of discussions going on from sort of commercial level stuff, like Terex, like what is I'm using it as an example.
Yeah.
I don't want Terex to get angry at me, but like, what does Terex do when they've got, 40 or 50 kids or employees that need childcare? Do they build a daycare in there? Those discussions are going on now actively. There's other planning processes, citywide grassroots planning processes, like what do we do to assist in-home people? Because you guys are an essential linchpin in helping everyone. Because if we don't have childcare, you don't have a workforce, and if you don't have a workforce, you don't have a very healthy city. So a lot of that is not gonna happen today at this particular meeting. We're talking about fences and square footage, unfortunately, but those discussions are happening, and there are a lot of very active, involved people that want to do the right thing. And so please be heard, because you guys know better than anybody what you need. And unfortunately, we hear the least from you folks. And I'm not blaming you at all, because like I said, I understand, but the last thing Cole wants to do after dealing with 12 kids all day is come and talk to a bunch of people at a board, right? And try to explain that. So I don't blame that. I just, if you can, or weave us in so we can get your opinions about what to do so we don't mess it up.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So,
Mr. Chair, what I was wondering is on the fence, I know some of them do have chain link fences. Is there any way that we could grandfather in the ones that already have the chain link fence? And then for new people, that they have to put up the 6-foot fence?
So what I was gonna suggest actually, as far as the fence goes, is to say 4 feet, because they're most likely children that you're not, like, that's what you're needing the screening from. I think that the privacy though is important.
Yeah, and the purpose of including that there, and from a zoning perspective, right, is the protection of the neighborhood as well as the safety aspect of it. So it's not just about containing the kids. And again, this is only from what requirements would we impose on something where we would say we literally don't need to see anything else, we can rubber stamp it if it meets these requirements.
Yep.
That's not to say if we didn't come before the board, we wouldn't still approve it, because we've done many that didn't have any kind of fence.
Yeah.
I can't think of one that we haven't approved. I know that every time I say that, there's always kind of a,
Yeah,
but I
what
don't, and I
about-
can't ever think of the one that we haven't approved. But in 7 years, I don't think we've ever approved it. That's what led to this discussion, like, hey, let's make it so it's Brandy's job and not everyone else's.
What about if they weave that vinyl through the chain link fence? Would that be considered a privacy fence? I've
If
seen
it's
it
not
at
less than
schools.
10% transparency,
Oh, because I've seen that at schools too.
I think that, yeah, I mean, by all means, and the thing about it is that if we would approve a fence like that and somebody and they did that, and then a neighbor says, my neighbor has a daycare, then that would still be a complaint basis where, like, we could bring it to the board and have the interpretation be, because like what we would say then as staff is, well, we felt that was providing sufficient screening. And then they may, and if that's challenged, like, ultimately, every community member has that right to appeal staff's administrative judgment. So then it gives them that out, or that hearing to come to the Board of Adjustment. So,
We don't get those an awful lot, but there have been a few, yeah.
I remember there was one up in the northeast part of town, and mainly what he wanted to know was where the kid's gonna be at and how long, the hours. He had more questions than anything.
well, and there's also, oh my gosh, now I completely lost my train of thought. Oh, I think that the most common condition that we have placed on daycares has been fencing, and that has come from neighborhood concerns. And the other thing is that we don't want people to have to ask their neighbor for permission, because they are not the property owner. They are trying to fulfill a community need. So that is also, like, that's taken into consideration as far as the board goes when somebody's asking for this conditional use, the way that it has been. But then that's just where, the only reason with this process of including that exterior requirement of the fence, which I do think it can be 4 feet, then that is just so that we're protecting the neighborhood too, because unfortunately, we always have to be the middleman. We have to be looking out for all parties of interest in all different scenarios. So,
Go ahead, sorry.
Hey, ma'am,
My name is Michelle Bernard. I have a little bit of a unique situation where I've been a provider for nearly 33 years. Some of the questions that have come up is like, how long has the existing ordinance been in effect? You said nothing changed. How long has that been in place? Because I've been here longer than the ordinance, I think.
well, the ordinance, I think-
Two, we were being grandfathered in, but that wasn't explained. I last night filled it out, paid my $200 plus $7 fee to use my credit card, and now I learn I really don't need to do that? Are you gonna
No,
give me
but-
my money back?
that is still an ordinance, and I'll pull up when the ordinance was approved. So the new ordinance is not in effect, because it's here for planning commission approval, and then it goes to city council. But what we're saying, and what we have, like what I've said with the radio or any of this, kind of how it has escalated, is that if you've existed for 30 years, there's no rush.
Well, nobody told me that. I mean, your comment about ignorance, that's a little bit of a two-way street here.
Who didn't? Okay, so I I can't educate the public on all the ordinances.
Where do we go to find them, I guess?
So there's.
It is on the website, the
The
city
city, the
website.
city ordinance is on the Watertown City.
But what I'm saying though is that you said, okay, at 30 years, you know, it's kind of a given, but that's not how it reads. And granted, this isn't passed yet, but the only thing that's in this now that's changed is the 6-foot fence. So I'm curious as to how long the ordinance that is in place has been there, when the new ordinance is possibly taking place. And
2012, it was amended. So that is when this
so
use.
I've been in noncompliance since 2012.
Yes.
And potentially even longer than that. That was just the last change to the
Yeah.
ordinance,
Sure.
right?
I think I've been noncompliance for 33 years, sir.
That, yeah. Nobody.
You know, what I'm saying is, old timers like me, we saw this stuff being talked about and published, and I didn't, you know, I had ignorance. I'm sorry, I had a little ignorance there. But I also have talked to somebody else in the City Hall ordinance that works with Terry, the guy that goes around because he had me remove my sign a few years ago. And then after 18 months, I sent pictures of other people that had signs. And between him and the other gal in that office, they said, oh, we were going to get back to you to tell you that that has changed again. You can put your sign back. But until I raised questions about it, I was not allowed to put my sign back. And that gal has my name and number because she had specifically told me 2 or 3 times on the phone, Michelle, we all know you do daycare. We all know where you're at, and we all know you have daycare there. And I've waited a lot of years. I've been in the house I'm in now 28 years, and it's been that long. I mean, maybe not that Terry's been there, you know, about signs, but a long time. So I'm just coming back about, granted, it's you know, you can't play ignorance with the IRS either. Everyone knows that. But when you do know the ones that are doing daycare, is it difficult to let us know? We have a group chat. We fill each other in. It didn't need to be, this didn't need to be an issue. But KXLG posted its little deal. And it doesn't say, however, if you've been doing this 30 years, if you're already established, you're being granted none of that. So that's where this issue of it being an issue is from.
Yeah, I certainly agree that there was a lot of misinformation posted online that don't reflect reality.
So this even isn't an ordinance as of now.
That's what we're deciding here today.
Okay?
So from here, Chair, sorry.
Yep.
From here, we either would approve the amendments or not, and then it goes to the city council after that. We are just an intermediary board that does sort of the heavy lifting for the city council on several hundred pages of really dense material. I don't, you know, I've been on this board now 7 years, and I don't think I've ever read page to page the 300 pages of our city ordinance, and I just search it when I need to. And so I don't expect everyone to always know that. And obviously, we don't always do a perfect job of notifying people and those kinds of things. I would like to use this as a positive opportunity, one, for input as it relates to zoning specific stuff, but 2, to engage you folks generally about like what we can do better to assist you. Because the goal is not to make this harder for you folks. Not on a zoning level, not on a city level, not as a community.
So it was KXLG then that just took the little bit of information and then just ran with it?
Well,
can
I
I
don't want
speak to
to
that?
cause, I appreciate local news. I appreciate the Watertown Current here, Mr. Horst.
But that's what happened.
When I read the KXLG article, at first, actually, I got about 5 or 6 text messages before I even knew what the heck happened, and
Yeah.
I was in the meeting. Because it was pretty, what I would call perfunctory, kind of like, oh, we're going to make this easier. We've been talking about doing this for 5 or 6 years, and we haven't done anything. We're going to make this hopefully easier for providers, literally, you know, or metaphorically rubber stamp 80% of them, as opposed to making them come in front of us. I was a little bit concerned with how it was portrayed by KXLG. I know I'm not throwing them under the bus. I appreciate local news and reporting, but again, I think there was maybe some miscommunication or some misunderstanding about how how things have gone. Fortunately, nobody sat through 11 years of meetings. I mean, we've got some institutional knowledge that has developed literally over a decade
Right.
or more.
That was just never followed up
And-
with online as to
Correct.
what was going on. Or there was, like,
If-
she made the comment that a lot of us wouldn't have had to shut down this afternoon for that.
Some of this is like, you guys may have played it with your children too, the game of telephone, right? More times you repeat something and tell it to one person, to the next person, things
Well,
change
we were just
over
all
time.
actually going by
Yeah.
what was printed.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
That's where all of this is actually coming from, all of it.
Yes, sir.
being that, once that article come out, of course, city council's phone started ringing and texts and everything. I did ask Ms. Hatton to join me from the halls of City Hall the following week to set the record straight. She did a tremendous job, but evidently there wasn't a lot of people that seen that part, but we did see a need to
Nothing.
to do
I,
that, so.
I did ask Steve Jurens with KXLG. He posted it to that same article.
He did update the original article, but then,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, because that's where, so if staff could control everything actually, if anyone can control everything that is said on social media, I would just encourage to really reach out to where this information is coming from before, forming your own narrative.
and definitely reach out to City Hall. Brandy, I know you fielded a lot of questions personally.
Yeah,
on
I
it.
did that too. I emailed you last week.
And-
I didn't hear anything back.
And also, don't be afraid to reach out to any of your council people, because we will get back to you, so, thank you.
The last thing I'm wondering about is the parking. What was the final thing about the parking in front of daycare home? We don't have parking lots and some of us don't have driveways in the front, so just utilizing the public street is fine?
It's really to have a plan for ingress and egress of the children.
We'll review those by case.
Yeah.
There's no requirement that there's 3 off-street parking or anything like that. It's not like it's specified.
Also, is this a one-time fee, yearly fee?
No
So
fee.
if you meet all the requirements, there is no fee proposed. If you do the conditional use, which comes before the board, the same process that exists today, there is a fee for the conditional use. And it's the same conditional use fee regardless of whether it's a daycare or it's any other home business.
Okay.
Or any other conditional
So my
use.
application went in last night and I paid for it, so are you going to let me know then if I don't need to pay that?
Well, so that's a tough one because this ordinance is not approved. This streamlined process that we are not, like, I'm
Get
that.
I just asked the
Told me I
question
don't have
is-
to pay it, but
So-
I
If
did.
somebody submits an application but would like to withdraw it, can you refund them their application fee?
You can, yeah.
Is this a yearly thing we would?
That's where honestly,
So if she would like to withdraw her application, allow this to go through the council process, and if it approves, she might not have to pay a fee.
Just apply.
She could withdraw her application.
yeah, if she meets all 3 requirements.
Yeah. But she can't apply for that until, we make a recommendation today. City council ultimately is going to have the discussions at their level. It'll go for public reading there. They'll
You
ultimately
make
decide.
that application at, where's that application then?
It'll be
Explain.
through City Hall, but it's not yet real, right? This is just a proposal at this time.
Brandy, what's the timeline? Sorry, Chair.
It'll be January 21st when it goes to city council for second reading,
And then from second reading, is it immediately effective? or-
25 days,
So 25 days from January 17th,
21st.
21st, sorry.
So is that what you recommend I do is
So Valentine's Day.
application? Okay,
Well, but I would say, like, you have a daycare. It's been 30 years of being legal non-conforming. So we've had people reach out through this process because they weren't aware that this was a thing. And they have applied as well. And so I would argue that all of the daycares that have applied since Carla did some research there. How many daycares do we have that are actually have received a conditional use? So then do we refund them because they followed the process.
I would recommend having them hold off until, this ultimately gets decided by council. And then, perhaps many of them don't have to pay a fee, right?
Yeah, and so, but the thing is that if you don't meet all three of the requirements that are in ordinance, I would encourage you to still apply.
If you know you're not gonna,
Are the first three fence, the square footage,
Yep,
parking?
yep, and that is all online.
Right.
For,
But that's
what
what you're
is
looking
being-
at. So that's why my question came back to parking. When I filled out my application last night, I said I utilize the city street, but, I have adults that come to my house every day and drop off and pick up, so they are adults as doing so.
yeah, I think by and large that's okay.
Yeah,
One
if
one of the considerations would be like if you're on Highway 81, obviously you can't use 81 as your, on-street parking for egress and ingress of the children, right? You have to have a driveway or an alleyway or some other way of getting the kids.
Okay. Well, in that way, then I understand it as I shouldn't have a problem at all then with it, and then I'll.
May not,
How do I go about pulling that application? Can I just tell you to disregard it?
Yeah.
Okay, do that, please. That would be great.
yeah, not a problem. And then the main thing with the off-street parking is for like that your single-family home has sufficient parking. It is typical that there is drop-off on-street,
Yeah.
but it's just really so you have your off-street vehicles, so you're not taking up the on-street areas type of situation, so.
The lawyer in me doesn't like the word sufficient. What does that mean?
I mean, we can take it out.
Is that something that you determine?
That's been an ordinance.
No, I understand. But I mean, is that something that is now administratively determined going forward? And is
Yeah, it
one-
would be.
Is two spaces sufficient? I mean,
Well, like I said, it's off-street parking for your single-family home. So you're required to have your two. As long as you're good there, that's all I'm looking at.
okay.
So no additional requirements above what a typical residence would have.
Right. Right. And then that you're not on Highway 81, that's where your access is coming from. Like that is something that, like, it's more so it is administrative in that, and anything that's interpreted by staff can be challenged. We're public servants. We're not the creator, the determinator of rules type of thing. Like we're not the end all be all. So
Mr. Chair.
if there's things that the staff has issues with really deciphering, then we would bring it to a board.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Shepherd?
that would be basically just stating that we're not going to impede everyday traffic. Correct?
Right.
Yeah, so if you got no parking on your side of the road, they can't park on your side of the road to bring their kids in, they got to park at the other side of the road. Or if you live on Highway 81, there's no parking on Highway 81. So just common sense.
That's a given.
Common sense, you can't impede traffic, so.
Okay. That's probably a better way to word it. Because that threw a lot of us, because, we don't have a parking lot for our customers.
I think somebody said it earlier that, I think it was Mr. Colhane that said sometimes the common sense part in politics don't go along together, so.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just really quick, just because it was asked, but since 2012, we've had 70 conditional uses for home daycares.
70, wow.
Since 2002.
2012 from my list.
Okay.
Okay, I have a
Does your
question.
list say how many is approved? I'm sorry to interrupt.
You're good.
The majority of, sorry about that. The majority of them were approved. I think throughout, there were maybe 3 denials, and one of them went back in front of the board and got approved after it originally was denied.
Okay, my name is Mariah Bramer. Just going off that article, and I know you guys said it's like playing telephone, but it says operating without this license constitutes a violation subject to penalties under Chapter 2199. Each day a violation is considered separate offense. So is this talking after that meeting on the 21st? Then we'll start getting penalties, or when are those penalties going to start if we're not licensed or permitted?
So that's consistent with the punishment section in ordinance already existing. And like I stated, we are not hunting down daycares that have not received a conditional use. It will be by a complaint base. So if you want to make sure that your daycare is conforming, I would encourage you to apply for the conditional use. And if you're not meeting the 3 requirements, you will have to go through the process that is in place today. So I would encourage you do it as soon as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not singling out daycares, that is the penalty for any non-compliance with the ordinance code there.
Correct.
Anybody else here to speak in the public hearing? Yes, sir.
Dustin Bartlett. I'm less speaking and more asking questions, if that's all right. So this has been, Brandy, right? Thank you so much. Like, I understand this issue so much better than I did at the start of the evening, right? So these rules were more or less already in place, and you're just saying if you have the square footage, if you have the off-street parking, and now this privacy fence, there's no need to go through a permitting process because you would basically be automatically approved anyway, so we're just skipping that, right?
Chair?
Okay, so I guess my only question is, I'm not a daycare provider. I am a parent with a 7-month-old who values his daycare provider so much that if there were any, shutting down of that, that's fighting words, right? So.
Thank you.
If, right now, I am using an in-home daycare that does not have a driveway in the home, because there are a lot of older homes in Watertown that don't have driveways, right? So right now, it's fine. If someone were to complain, if a neighbor were to say, hey, there's kids and I don't like kids, and, someone were to complain, what exactly happens from there then?
There are always other solutions, and that, like I've said it, we don't want neighbors holding somebody hostage type of way. So we always try to, and that's where if you come to the board and there's the conditional use application, they can be heard. The applicant can be heard, and then the board considers that's where it's all open, of what they want or what they find to be the middle ground.
And we've approved many properties that didn't have a driveway.
This is First Street, like it's a nice wide street where you can park on this side and you can park on this side, and you can still have 2 lanes of traffic going through the middle, so I just,
Exactly, yeah.
Chair?
that's all. I just wanted some clarification, because like I said, it's crucial. And I guess maybe I will just, for my comment, I have heard you say that how important daycare is in Watertown. I know Sarah Faust and the work that she's doing with that group, but I think it's important to reiterate that Watertown is in desperate need of additional daycare. And so we really don't want to be shutting down any that we already.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
To kind of answer your comment or question, I agree. My kids are at daycare as well. Well, my one's in elementary school now, but my younger one's at an in-home daycare. And the purpose for this is right now in our R1 zone, the only permitted use is a single-family home. No businesses. Someone can't buy right next to you and put up a bar or a supermarket or anything. And then right now, in our current ordinance, there's the conditional uses, which allow for a home occupation. That home occupation currently encompasses all home businesses, whether it's a daycare or whether you tune pianos or whether you have an office or a real estate company. All current businesses that want to reside in the residential zone, since they're not just permitted, have to come before this board to get approval per our ordinance. I know not all of them have. We're not trying to hunt anyone down to make them pay fees or fines. I would be willing to bet that we've never charged a fine for non-compliance on daycare, I'd be willing to put money on that. What we're trying to do here is add another permitted use, which is daycare homes, if, you know, if they meet some criteria. Maybe we don't need any criteria, we just need them permitted, but we want to get away that they're just permitted and don't have to come to this board, because we all agree. I mean, my kids are 3 and 7, and they both did in-home daycare, one still does. You know, I agree, they're very important. We just want to streamline this, because we've had 70 of them since I've been on the board, because I was here that long. Today's my last day. You know, people say the same thing. They come in and they say, it's 4:15 and I'm trying to run a daycare. Why is it right now? And, you know, and for a while, we also had a noon option. We don't have a noon option because that was hard to get board members here as well. So we are trying to make it a streamlined process. And then, you know, there'll still be a handful, probably 20%, that don't hit all three, and they'll still have to follow our current process, you know, and come before us and say, you know, I don't meet the 3 things, but I still want to do it. And we'll look at it and say, we're glad you want to do it, and I think your property will still work. And 68 out of 70 times we'll say, yeah, that works, and we'll approve it. So that's where we're trying to get at with this. So, thank you.
And the thing about the 4:15 start time is that you all have jobs and things as well. And so it's really, it's just where we've landed.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
acknowledging that coming for us is just a streamlined process for permitted use home daycare. But it was brought up, and it was adjacent or tangential to, you know, the ordinance there about the screening requirements versus fencing, so forth. And I think it merits some kind of reconsideration going forward here. The purpose was given, there were 2 purposes thrown out, privacy and safety. I would push back on privacy. I don't know if that's a necessity for this use or not. I would say that safety is a necessity, but then again, a hedge doesn't provide safety for, you know, children in a home daycare use setting. So it just seems that I think it warrants revisiting and maybe a little more consideration, the requirement, so it's better defined, because it does seem somewhat inconsistent now in application. You know, what is it there for? And I, like, personally, I don't see a need for a privacy fence in the residential area as much as I do see a need for safety considerations. Thank you.
And the main thing that it was looking at is screening. Not as far as daycare supervision of a provider of, you know, and that's not the zoning ordinance's purpose.
Do you have the public hearing open here if there's anybody else that wanted to say anything? Did we have anybody online, Brandy?
I don't think so.
Last call for the room here. We'll close the public hearing.
I'm not even joined.
We'll look to the board for motion for action on this one.
Are we moving to approve the entire 24-24 resolution?
Yes.
Do we have any other issues with any of the others stuff? I guess my suggested motion, based on the input today, would be to approve 2020 or 24-24, amending very limitedly 21.8302 subsection 2, switch 6-foot fence to 4-foot fence, and 80302 subsection 3, remove adequate, provide off-street parking or other suitable plan for the loading and unloading of children.
Sounds good.
That would be my
Second.
motion.
I'll second that
A
motion.
motion and a second. Discussion from the board.
No, I agree 100%. That's what I was gonna say too.
And I will just say, I think it's important that the city knows that there's, where, daycares are in case there was ever a fire or an emergency. I would hate for, them not to be listed somewhere for, emergency staff to know that there's kids there. So I'm still glad that there's a permit. I mean, I hope it streamlines it. I hope they, come to Brandy. They say, we got these things. They get their permit. She can let the fire department know that there's potentially up to 12 kids there. And then if there ever is an emergency, they'll know to get them all out. And so I think it's good.
I like it.
I would just add as well, ordinances are iterative to some extent, right? So we had the current ordinance in place for quite some time now. We want to improve it, and so that's what we're here to do today. You don't always get it 100% correct, but I think this is a move in the right direction. We're trying to make it easier for as many people as possible. Other comments? We'll take a roll call vote.
Brink,
Yes.
Culhane,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Valetsky.
Yes.
Spire.
Yes.
The motion carries. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, Brandy, which is 6C, and that is ordinance number 24-17.
All right, thank you, Blake. So this is ordinance number 2417, and this is just for ordinance amendments related to sign code for chapter 2180. Most of these things are just clarifying regulations that we have seen issues with throughout the years since the last major overhaul, when we changed it from being content neutral with the Supreme Court case that was decided in 2017. So I have the list bulleted of the main changes in your agenda packets and then on the screen as well. And I don't know if you guys want me to go through them specifically. I presented them during the presentation last week, so I'll stand by for any questions.
Yeah, we'll open the public hearing on this one as well. I didn't have any additional input really on anything that you haven't addressed already. Anything from the board? Anybody in the room? Anybody
Anything
online?
to say, Mr. Horst, about signage? No, thank you, Brandy. You've done a
All right.
really incredible job on this, on the daycare stuff. I know that sometimes it's challenging, but this is the biggest improvements in terms of the ordinance that I've seen in the 7 years I've been here, or 8 years I've been here. In terms of zoning ordinances, that
Yeah.
is.
It is, for sure.
Appreciate that. Sometimes it feels like no good deed goes unpunished, and I love public service.
Creed of the staff officer.
I'll close the public hearing on this one. So we need a motion on 2417.
Move to approve.
Motion by Culhane,
Second.
second by Spire. Discussion on this one? Roll call vote. Brandy?
Spire.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Dolly.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes.
That motion passes. With that, we'll move on to item 6D on the agendas, 24-29.
Yes, thank you, Blake. Oh, sorry, I kind of cut you off there. You didn't.
Nope, you're good.
So again, this is just the ordinances referencing, or in reference to home occupation, specific use office buildings, bed and breakfast, campgrounds, wireless telecommunication towers, communal living, swimming pools. And all of them are very clerical, again, just things that we've run into administratively. With these, they are actually like pretty strictly clerical, because it's just a changing wording to make it consistent with using the terms like design standards or special use provision, things like that.
Planning commission versus plan commission. I think that was
Yes.
in there a few times.
Yep. And the swimming pool section, that came from Title 11. A lot of those provisions already existed in ordinance, but many of them, it's still going to exist in Title 11, but there was like overlap of things that should be also regulated as far as like setbacks and code and whatnot. So we wanted to at least incorporate that section into Title 21 because that's where you go to look when you're trying to place an in-ground swimming pool. So nothing is changing with it, but just relocating it. And with that, I'll stand by for questions, for any questions the board has.
Thank you, Brandy. I'll open the public hearing on this one as well. If anybody's here to speak on behalf or against. Over to you, Kyle. Anything? And
Cool with his pool.
we don't have anybody online at all, right? On
No.
Teams? Okay.
No, I don't believe so. I
Close the
wasn't-
public hearing on this one as well. Look for action.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Colhane, second by Brink. Discussion on this one? And this one looked good as well, so we'll take a roll call vote.
All right, Brink,
Yes.
Colhane.
Yep.
Dolly,
Yes?
Aletsky,
Yes.
Spire.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next on the list, we've got 6E is commission consideration for ordinance 24-30. This one's the yards and open spaces, fences, hedges, off-street parking.
Yes, thank you, Blake. So this is, again, improvements. The major change to the chapter, or to the chapters included in this ordinance are for the fences and walls and hedges to provide greater detail, because our previous ordinance was very bare bones and did not provide much guidance for what is required. This should not be detrimental at all, but really just provide more clarity. So other than that, I'll scroll through. Very small changes being added here. And like I said, you know, this is just an overall, this is an overhaul of changing a lot of the clerical things, changing the easy things. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for deep dives of any of these ordinances in the future, because this is like a Band-Aid. This is not a lot of these things. And actually, I might just add that when you're going through ordinances or you are administering ordinance, the possibilities of who to contact or who to hold a focus group with are endless. And it's frankly unreasonable and impossible. And so if we were to be actually doing a deep dive that we thought was going to impact a group of people, we would have a meeting, we would have a task force meeting. We've had plenty of those over the years when we are doing a deep dive of ordinance. So that's just where I want to at least make that publicly known that staff, it is not, if there's something that is going to negatively impact a group of people or an industry, we want your involvement. It's not our motivation to try to create issues, we're trying to solve them. Yeah. So we are the ones that are receiving the information, we hear the issues, the complaints, what doesn't work. Our purpose is to try to solve those. And if it's something that is truly a benefit, no, there's just no way of being in contact with all interested parties. That is why there is state statute for what is required for public noticing. And if anybody wants to stay completely involved, you unfortunately, you do have to look at the paper. And I'm not saying, I don't mean unfortunately for papers, but so our public notice requirement is in the public opinion. That is the paper where we do our noticing. That, and I say only just disregard the unfortunately. That was not supposed to mean any certain thing. But what I'm saying that is because it's only one outlet. it just is impossible all the ways that you can contact people or make them aware. So it is just the one location at this time, and that is what's required. We're following state statute, and really like just our main motive is to try to fix these issues. And if there are ordinances that do not work, I do want to encourage that. You know, we hear about those and we hear about them through roundabout ways. Come with the solution. Propose the solution, because there are a lot of ordinances in just Title 21, and that's not the only ordinance title that we deal with as staff. So, yeah, that's just my little soapbox there.
And public opinion is just the minimum state statute, right, to do that. But the city goes above and beyond that as well, right? I know you guys are, you do the interviews that you talked about once a week and appear on KXLG. We've got it on the website, and everybody can sign up for automated notifications.
Yes.
There's a lot of different mechanisms that are available to keep in front of some of the stuff that's happening in the community.
Yes.
Sounds like it'd be a good article for Kyle to write. You know, because that is an issue, people don't, we hear all the complaints, people were coming to us with a question or possible solution.
Like,
We try to encourage it all the time, I mean, you guys get the run of it, I mean, I'm glad I got my job out here, so.
yeah, we cannot do it all, and we're not trying to create regulations that don't work for the community. The ordinance should work for the community. And there are gonna be the area, there's always gonna be the things that work for one group but don't for another. And, you know, that's what you guys are to have, the difficult position of trying to find that middle ground. And same with city council, you know, you have to hear out both sides and figure out ultimately what is best for the community.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay, on the fencing, you know, on that CL Lake District, what we're talking about now is some of the fencing and for privacy and stuff, do like a berm and then get some different types of trees, like a conifer tree and different things like that. Is that in this too, for that?
This is just if you decide to put a fence up.
Yeah. But I'm talking about fences, walls and hedges and stuff for privacy and stuff like that.
Yeah, so if,
Just wondering.
are you
if-
talking for daycare?
No.
No, just
I'm
for the
talking
section that we're
about
on now.
This section that we're on.
Oh, so this isn't required, this is only if you're, oh, okay, like,
What I'm
do you have the
saying-
specific section that you're referencing? Like, I
no,
know
I'm-
it's the
no,
chapter.
I am just saying that on our CL district that I'm on, that we're writing that up and stuff right now, we're talking about like a berm and stuff like that. Could something like that be in there?
So we wouldn't
2161.
regulate that. So this,
Yeah.
if you want to put a berm on your property, you can.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is for fencing and stuff like that, for
For
required.
screening purposes.
screening
So we had
purposes.
a few years ago when the hospital expanded up there, instead of planting bushes, we allowed them to do a berm to protect the neighboring properties from lights.
Yes, and realize that's because they came for a conditional use, and that was a condition.
Yeah.
This is just an ordinance that says if you're going to have a fence, this is what you need to meet. So you can always put those conditions as a trade-off for screening of a certain property.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Or if it
My
was,
2 cents.
or if it was applicable to a certain zoning
Yeah.
district and you wanted a requirement like that, that's what we've done with like the Gateway Overlay District that has its
Yeah.
own special rules, right?
And we're like 2 different commercial and residential meet, something
Very,
like
very
that.
similar with the commercial lake discussion. Okay, I will open the public hearing on this one as well. If anybody's here to speak on behalf or against. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll look for a motion by the board.
So moved.
There you
Motion by
go.
Culhane,
Second.
second by Brink. Discussion on this. Okay, roll call vote, please, Brandy.
All right, Spire,
Yes.
Oletzky.
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes,
Colhane.
Yep.
Brink.
Yes.
motion carries. Moving on to item 6F on the agenda is ordinance number 24-28. Brandy, I'll pass it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Blake. Where is it? So this is our last of the compilation here. This one is the easiest. Save the easiest for last, or some would say best. These are all clerical. Again, a lot of it's planning commission. It's just, and then the only thing that's substantial is, well, even though it is just clarifying, but nothing in ordinance was that clear about that you have to have a primary structure to be able to have a accessory structure. So we've added that language in there. And then that you also, this is something that we've contemplated before and that has been asked, and it seems reasonable, that if you have a building permit for a new single-family home on a lot that does not have a home yet, that you can have your camper or your RV if you desire to do that while your house is being built. So that's the only thing, and it's just for it to be able to be placed for the extent of the building permit.
Which is typically 1 year.
Yes.
They could technically get an extension on a building permit, though. Does that apply to this use as well?
Yeah, so if if somebody needs an extension, which we have experienced a lot of those just with materials, backup, all things, and as long as it's reasonable. But if somebody has a building permit and they have only poured a foundation, probably not going to renew it because you have to be having progress. And I don't think that the intent with this would be that somebody would go through the work of putting together building plans to get a building permit to have their camper on a lot for a year.
But it would give you the flexibility if, it was supposed to take, 10 months and now it's looking like it's going to take 14 because supply chain.
Yeah.
Then they have
Yeah.
flexibility.
Yep.
Okay, open the public hearing on this one as well. See nobody in the audience, we'll close the public hearing. Look for a motion from the board.
Last item on my last meeting, I will make a motion to approve it.
There you go.
Second.
Oh, third.
We have a motion by Brink, second by Spire. Any discussion on this one? No. Okay, roll call vote.
All right, Spire,
Yes.
Aletsky,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes,
Colhane,
Yep.
Brink.
Yes.
that motion carries. Item 7 was open public comments. We don't have anybody to speak. Do you have any new business, Brandy?
Yes, I just wanted to take a moment here before we adjourn that, as Jeff has stated, that it is some of yours, and actually just Jeff that's here presently, last meeting and of this very long drawn out term that you all have held. So I just wanted to take a little time to recognize all of the service that you guys have contributed and dedicated to the city of Watertown. It does not go unnoticed, and we are very grateful for you. It's not an easy job, and sometimes there are a lot of discussion over unanticipated things. Sometimes we get things figured out and get it just right. It is a lot to really be that you all have been very dedicated and committed to, and we appreciate you very much. And so just to point out, so Blake Dolly is our chairman, and he has served, and has this been continuous, because this would be before my time, since 2013.
Holy smokes.
Yes, so that is outstanding. And like I said, a lot of you actually have been with me since I began my job in public service. That was in 2016, and a lot of you then were elected appointed in 2018. But to have 6 years of I'm running out of words, of uninterrupted service and being a part of the board is just outstanding. And just really, for me, even we've been through a lot. We have seen a lot of applications. We have heard a lot of testimony. We've accomplished a lot. And, some of you have sat on subcommittees that we've had, and just all of the time and effort that you have, and the thought and expertise, and just, it's amazing. It's incredible. And it sometimes seems like, you get stuck in the minutia of meeting to meeting, but We've basically been together for 200, over 200, no, what did I come up with here? I think it was, God dang. I don't think I maybe got to that stat. I know, well, it's been 6 years times 12, times 2. So that's the, I got
lot
to
of
figure this
meetings.
out now. Yeah. Sorry, guys, I did not get that. I wanted to.
Then you
But,
can multiply it by the hours, and then it really starts to add up.
yeah, exactly. And here I am just wasting more of our time.
No, you're good. I
And then
appreciate it.
since 2017 has Liam Colhane and Todd Kays. That's been 7 years. And then since 2018 has been Jeff Brink, Bonnie Aletsky, Rhonda Dargis Johnson, and Diana Ford. And then since 2020 has been Bill Spire. So many of you we appreciate are going to continue on now that we have worked out the new administration section of ordinance where we have reset the terms so that we can get on a cycle of actual, like, and a schedule with appointments. So appreciate all of you that will still be along for the ride, and we'll continue to do the good work and improve and show up for the city of Watertown. But Jeff Brink, his term will be coming to an end today, as he has opted to fulfill his term, which has been very much appreciated. It's been 6 years, a long time, long commitment. Or actually, Jeff, you were 6. So Jeff had an interest, always brought interesting perspective as a former planner and then also a civil engineer with the DOT currently in his position. So it's always, that institutional knowledge and technical background and critical thinking has been, it's been such a great addition to the board. And so I've always appreciated your input. We both have, Carla and I, all the staff that's worked with you. And if City Hall brought you back twice, and it's been the old building, there's always a third time as a charm. So maybe the new building will bring you back to another capacity of the board.
Well, I appreciate that, and I have really enjoyed my time on here, and honestly, I'm only stepping down because been missing some meetings and conflict with some other stuff, so it's been a lot of meetings where I've either missed or been having to leave at 5, so, it's been a really good experience, and, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Brink. We appreciated your expertise and your perspective.
I appreciate your
normally
ongoing support of the community too, because you're stepping down from this board, but I know you're actively involved in hockey association and with the youth. So I commend you in all aspects of your public service.
And
I normally wouldn't speak on behalf of the whole council, but I feel pretty confident in this comment that I'm going to thank all of you for what you do, no matter if it's the new ones coming on or the people that have been here for many years, because it is a very thankless job. We do appreciate you guys. I mean, you guys are the ones that do the homework before it gets to us, and you're the ones that sometimes make the tough decision before it ever gets to us. Sometimes we can muddle it up a little bit also, so we don't always agree with you, but that's part of politics, I guess. But I've always said you guys got the most thankless job in town, and I do appreciate your dedication and hard work that you guys put in. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me.
And I just want to add one more thing too, that Diana Ford, was unable to attend tonight, but then this is also her last meeting of her term, and that she will not be moving forward. But again, she has been with us at the Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission since 2018. Incredible. She has brought such value and insight as well. Her commitment and dedication, she's steadfast, and that is the type of and that she's through and through is incredible, and we have appreciated her very much. So,
Absolutely. I think we've been super fortunate to have a really good group of people through my entire time on this board. It's been, really a privilege and an honor. I get one more year of serving on this, but these really are some truly great people that devote their time to this. You know,
Yes.
I don't think a lot of the community realizes, you know, that some of these positions are, you know, volunteer positions when they come in here to have passionate words maybe, you know, about a topic, but.
What I've noticed, like out in the public, people say, oh, you're on city council. I
Yeah.
said, no, no, no,
Yeah. No.
I volunteer. But people really do watch us and
Yeah.
they see what's going on.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate your words, Brandy, and Jeff, greatly appreciate your time here.
Yeah.
Yes. And then, so we handed out, we had the gifts. That is for Christmas. Wishing you all a Merry Christmas. And then also as the terms are coming to a close, as a thank you as well. And then we'll kick off all, you're going to be missing out, Jeff. We're going to kick off all the fun of the new term in the new year. So,
Watching us on TV with envy.
I'll wait till I get home.
all right.
Okay. Any other
Yeah,
new business?
None that I have.
Any from the board? No. Any old business?
No,
Any reason for executive session?
no.
I will adjourn us.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.